Welcome back. This is the third video in a three-part series for setting up the Project Management Office template set in Smartsheet. This template set is very handy and will save you a lot of time if you're looking for a portfolio roll-up of all of your projects, whether on your team, in your department, or even organization-wide. The way this series is recorded is for you to be able to follow along with me and actually set up your template set. So you can pause this as we move throughout so that you can watch me do something and then you can go ahead and do it on your own. I also recommend pulling up the instructions for the Project Management Office template set. I show you how to get to these instructions in the first video. And so if you're watching these all one after the other, video 1, video 2, video 3, there's a good chance that you still have this pulled up. In the first video, we covered the setup and customize steps. In the second video, we focused on customizing the project intake and portfolio level. And today, we are going to dig into customizing the project level. I have a separate video where I introduce people to Smartsheet and how to set up a project from scratch. If you have some people that are going to be working within Smartsheet and they haven't really maximized the use of the features for project level, that may be a better beginner video. This series is intended for intermediate. And so I'll move through some of this quickly, assuming that this isn't someone's first time going through and seeing some of these features in the project plan. Again, I will make sure that we link the introduction video for kind of welcome to Smartsheet and here's how to set up a project schedule from scratch so that people can become familiar with it, because in this video, we're going to move pretty quickly. Let's dig into step 1, modify the project plan sheet. I am starting here in the workspace that I created in video 1. I named it Awesome PMO. And I'm clicking on the project level folder. Within the project level folder, I created a new project in video 1 called Amethyst. When you click into that folder, select the project plan. That's what we're going to be working with throughout this video. Now, we want to modify this to our needs. I am going to talk about baselines for project management, which is something I highly recommend setting up if you've not used those in Smartsheet. So I will cover those momentarily. Gave me a notification here about baselines. Got it. The project plan defaults to the Gantt view. I prefer to work in the grid view as we go through and customize. If you're the same, go ahead and change your view. Where it says Gantt view, click on the arrow down, select grid view. And that's going to give you a pretty solid view, eliminating that Gantt chart view. The first thing that we want to edit are these rows where it's got our project phases. It's all of our gray rows. If you actually use these exact same phases, you can leave them the same. However, if you have different phases that you use within your team, department, organization, then we want to update these. So they're currently planning, execution, monitoring, and closing. Make note that there is a little lock next to these on the far left-hand side. If you can see where the blue locks are showing up, that means that unless you're an admin, you're unable to make changes to those. So if you are an admin, which you should be if you're setting up the PMO template set, you can click on those to rename them. I actually use all of these project phases when I'm setting up a project and following waterfall style. However, I like for it to say monitoring and controlling. I'm going to click on the unlock button. As a sheet admin, you can lock and unlock rows. Click OK to unlock the selected row. Then I'm going to double click and call it monitoring and controlling. I'm going to relock so that no one else can change the name of those phases. And I'm going to click save. Note, you're going to need to set up each of your project plans in the exact same way that we're covering now. So each time you have a new project intake form submitted and you copy the project folder from your workspace for a new project, just like we did in video 1. So if you need to go back and refresh and watch video 1 again, please do. And then you'll need to come in and update the project plan sheets. While I'm working in here, I also want to make some of these columns wider. So I'm going to click and drag once these arrows show up. You can just hover over where the columns meet, and you should get the 2 arrows going in separate ways. If you click, you can drag those so that you can see everything that's in each of those columns. Now, because it gave us generic activities in this task name column, you want to go through and add each of the steps that are required within your organization for the planning phase. Each of the tasks or steps that are required in the execution phase for this specific project. All of the monitoring and controlling activities, all of the closing activities. Don't let the terminology confuse you where it says task name and then it says activity. Project Management Institute, they call task activities instead. So if you're reading through the PMBOK, you're going to see where it's referring to activities. Really think of activities as a task. Some people use them interchangeably. Before we dive in and start editing everything, let's take a look at the different column headers here. We have schedule, health, and you will see that it is a green, amber, red color system to show us if they're on track or not. Task name, activity, we just talked about that. The status, it's going to be a drop down: in progress, on hold, complete, canceled. Assigned to, got the start date column, the end date, percent complete, duration, predecessor task. We'll talk a bit more about that and the importance of having a logic-driven schedule. The target start date, the target end date, the schedule delta percentage, schedule delta in working days. Since we are setting this up from the very beginning, we want to mark everything as not started. You'll see that it defaults to some other options here. That's just how the template was set up. I want to put everything as not started. Select it from the drop down. I can even drag it down by grabbing the bottom right-hand corner, clicking when I see that plus sign and just dragging it down. Want everything to say not started. I also want to zero out the percent complete. Also want to delete all of the assigned to, because that is just filler information and we're actually going to assign it to people in here so that they know what they are responsible for completing. So we're going to need to customize this entire thing. I'm not going to spend the time doing it all here. Again, refer back to how to set up a project plan video that I've got linked in the comments here if you want to go through and see all of it. However, we do want to take some specific steps here to ensure that we've got a solid logic-driven schedule with our predecessor task documented. The schedule health, this is automatically calculated by the actual start date and the actual end date. So these two columns compared to the target start date and the target end date. Since we're starting this from scratch, these dates should be exactly the same at the beginning of the project. We're going to update row 3 to the date that we're starting the project. I'm going to select, let's just say, today's date, December 4th. These two columns for the target start date and the target end date are locked. So again, you're going to need to be an admin to unlock that. Yes, I want to unlock it for both of those because again, I need them to exactly match the start date and end date actual. Because I just updated row 3, which is project kickoff, that is the date that we are going to kick off the planning. I've updated that here in start date and end date to December 4th. It's got 5 days duration, so it automatically populated the end date. And then I updated it in the target start date, the target end date, which zeroed out the schedule delta percentage and the schedule delta in working days, and then changed it to green. Just wanted to show you an example there of how that schedule health automatically updates based on the start date, end date, the target start date and end date. I am not going to manually go through and update all of these. What I'm going to do is go through the project schedule and update all of the start dates and the end dates by adding in predecessors. When you create a logic-driven schedule, it is important to try to link every single task to another task as far as when it can start. The predecessors are what changes the dates in here. We don't want to manually add start date and end date except for the project kickoff, which is row 3. That's very important. Otherwise, we're going to have a very manual type of project schedule where we're having to manually hard code these dates. That breaks the entire logic from your schedule. And again, when I'm talking about logic, I'm talking about predecessors, which help drive the start dates and the end dates in combination with the duration. When we talk about duration, we talk about how many days, how many working days it's going to take to complete something. So we're going to consider the week of December 4th as our project kickoff, 5 days in duration, 5 working days again. To just ground you a little bit more, each of our parent tasks, a parent task is a task that has grandchild task underneath of it. So in this project schedule, the parent tasks are in gray for each of the project phases. The grandchild tasks are in white. Now, you can indent by clicking on the indent arrows right or left up here from the menu bar. Now, if I indent activity 2, I just made that a grandchild task for activity 1. Now, if I did that by accident and I want to outdent, I will just click the arrow the other way. Any of the parent task, and you could tell if it's a parent task if it has a little negative sign or plus sign, because you can actually collapse that or consolidate it. If it's got a plus sign, it means there are grandchild tasks under it that you can go ahead and click on, and then it's going to show you all of them. The parent tasks are summary of all of the grandchild task. For example, these dates, the start date and the end date, are summary of all of these dates that fall below it. So it's going to really summarize what that looks like. Make sure that you're saving along the way as we do this. We will make sure before we wrap this up that everything looks the way that it's intended to. For this first step, I want you to go through and update all of the tasks that are required for your specific project. I'm going to go through and update a few Since we're in the planning phase, create project management plan. And maybe I want to call out each of the sections that should be in the project management plan. I won't call all of them out since there are quite a few, but let me indent activity 2 and 3 under create project management plan. And let me call this scope management plan, cost management plan. And you could add all of the different plans that you require within your project management plan for your organization. Those are just a couple of examples. Project management body of knowledge through PMI, currently the 7th edition. It can give you a really good guide on what should be included in the project management plan. So I won't go through all of that. But the first thing we want to do, go through and make sure all of the tasks that you need to track are in this project plan. Make sure that you're saving along the way, and don't worry about the other columns right now. A lot of what I was just showing you was to get you oriented with the project plan. Right now, I want you to focus on updating all things in the task name column. My recommendation is that you're working closely with the project team to get all of this on paper before you start diving in and just trying to do this on your own. So maybe you've created a work breakdown structure and you already know all of the work that needs to be completed in each of the phases. So hopefully you're not trying to figure it out at this point as you're going through and updating the task name column. Hopefully you have that information already, and this is just about getting it in here. Something that is really cool is you can attach things to each of the rows. And so maybe I want to give instructions to someone on exactly how to complete the project management plan, or there is a template that I want them to use. You can go ahead and click on the paper clip over here, and you can see that you can add attachments to that specific row. It can be very, very helpful. Right next to that is where you can add comments, and you can tag people in here or just add a comment. Once you have all of the tasks added in, we're going to check the box for step 1 of customize project level, which is modify the project plan sheet. Again, I just wanted to get you oriented with the project plan. And I am actually going to skip step 2 for now, which talks about baselines. We're going to skip this step. I will come back to it at the end, but because we don't have all of our dates and everything in here yet, it doesn't make sense to go through this. We are now going to go to step 3, which is adjust durations and predecessors. Talked a little bit about this already, but let's dig in a little bit deeper. I'm going to go back to my logic-driven schedule, which is what I'm working to complete. That means that I want to have a predecessor for every single task or activity. Maybe project kickoff is the only task that we don't have a predecessor, because that is the date that we're going to manually enter to get the rest of our dates to auto-populate. That's the only one that we want to, I'll call it hard code in the start date and end date. And then we're going to ask ourselves, so with project kickoff, what are all of the activities or tasks in the planning phase that can begin? Really, it's going to be the task or the activities that fall under create project management plan. I can begin drafting all of the project management plan at one time. And because I made this a parent task earlier by indenting these 2 plans underneath of it, I'm going to remove the predecessor from there. I want the predecessors to be at the lowest level. And so I'm going to add a 3, which is the row number. That's what we're adding here in the predecessor column, is the row number. So which task must be completed before this one can begin? I'm going to say 3 for both of those. 3 and 3. That is going to update our dates so that when this one ends on 12/8, this one begins the next business day. And the end dates for each of these are different based on the duration that I have in here. So if I change the duration, maybe they're both going to take 7 business days to complete. So I'm going to increase this from 3 days to 7 days. And now they start and end on the same date. This is what I'm talking about with a logic-driven schedule. I want everything to be linked to something else so that we never have to hard code or manually type in these start and end dates. My little secret is once I add the project kickoff date in here, I hard code it, I manually type it in, I lock these columns. I lock the columns by right-clicking on it, and then you see the little lock show up. You have to be an admin on this sheet to do that, but I don't want people manually typing in dates. I want everything to be logic-driven. I am then going to say, okay, for collect deliverables, I actually want that to start with project kickoff as well. So I'm going to link that to row 3. And that's going to take more than 1 day. I'm going to have that done at the same time that we're creating the project management plan. It's actually going to be part of the project management plan, and it adds 7 days to that. Now, my entire planning phase starts on 12/4 and ends on 12/19. If I'm looking at this and realize it doesn't seem realistic, I can always increase or decrease the duration. Okay, we know that we are not going to be able to do the scope management plan in 7 days. I need to increase that to 14. But maybe we can have the cost management plan done in 7 days. So you need to go ahead and make sure this is a realistic plan by updating the predecessor column and increasing or decreasing the duration. I do this phase by phase. So I'm going to do the planning phase first. And then once we are finished with the planning phase, we can go ahead and kick off the activity here for our execution. So I want to link kickoff activity to row 2, our parent task. You can have a parent task as a predecessor to the next phase. So I'm going to put 2 in here. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to delete all of the current predecessors and successors so I don't get confused at what I've added versus what was in the template set. Again, I want to add the predecessors to the lowest level. So I don't want to add something to this phase 1 because there's activities that fall below it. Activity 1 can also start when the planning phase is completed. I'm going to put row 2 as a predecessor. Activity 2 cannot begin until activity 1 is completed. So I'm going to add 11 here. And then I'm going to add 12. Hopefully you're getting the hang of this. I'm going to go ahead and go through, add all of the predecessors, update all of the durations. Note that you can have more than one predecessor for a row. For example, I want to ensure that phase 1 and phase 2 are predecessors of closing activity. So I have entered the rows 10 and 14. The only rows that do not have predecessors are the parent task. So please note that. I now have a logic-driven schedule. If I'm reviewing this with stakeholders and they don't think the dates are realistic, I can really easily increase the duration. Okay, activity 3 here under execution is going to take 28 days instead of 1. And when I click enter, the rest of the dates change for execution, and it increases my overall end date of my project. Now that I have all the start dates and end dates in here, and everyone agrees that they're realistic, we've updated the duration, we've got the predecessors, I'm going to copy all of these dates. So I've just selected starting at row 2 and scan down. I'm going to paste them into the target start and target end date so that they all match. That automatically updates my project status here so that we've got all green tasks, and I want to click save. Okay, so we have all of our tasks in there. All of our status should be not started. If it's showing in progress here on your main line, you can select not started if you'd like. We've got our start dates, our end dates, our percent complete, our duration, our predecessors. We've just copied and pasted our target start date, our target end date. Our schedule delta percentage is all 0. Our schedule delta working days is all 0. And we want to click save. The last thing that we need to do here, as far as updating these columns, is to make sure that we have assigned to in here. I'm going to type in my name here and add it. I'm just going to put myself for all of them for the time being to simplify showcasing this to you. Again, you can drag if you'd like. You can copy and paste, or you can drag by hovering over the bottom right-hand corner where you get that plus sign, and then drag down. And make sure that you save once you have all of the assigned to in here. I won't cover it in detail in this video. However, when you see a little red person that shows up on the far left-hand side, that means that the resource you have assigned is over allocated. The resource you have assigned is over allocated. I cover that in a separate video as well, as far as the resource management side of it. So please reference that video if you'd like to learn more. The next step that we're going to cover is adjusting your alerts. The automatic alert workflow, it's a great way to let your team know that they have tasks that they need to complete once they are assigned. This is already set up in the template. And so we want to go to Manage Workflows. Click on Automation at the top, Manage Workflows. And there are currently 2 alerts, Alert Assigned To, and then Recurring Incomplete Task Alert. We're going to click on the Alert Assigned To and edit. You may want to discuss this with the project team before you set this up, just to ensure that everyone agrees on how the alerts will work. The trigger here is when rows are changed, when any field changes, and this is going to run the workflow hourly. Maybe you don't want it to go hourly. I think daily is typically enough, in my opinion. It's going to alert someone, and it's going to send to contacts in the cell assigned to. So it's going to send to contacts in a cell assigned to. Right now, it is my name in all of those cells, so I'll be getting a lot of alerts in the near future. And then you can customize a message if you'd like. So task due or task update, and then links to sheet in all fields. So customize this to your liking as far as what the project team agrees on for these alerts, and make sure that you click save after you've updated it. So far, we have talked about the project plan sheet and all of the columns that are included. We have adjusted all durations and predecessors. We've assigned tasks to team members. And now we have adjusted the alert that is going to notify people. Again, talk that through with the project team, see what everyone agrees on. We're now going to talk about step 6, which is the sheet summary. View or edit your project summary data. I've gone a bit out of order as far as these steps, just to help it make a little bit more sense and flow a little bit easier, in my opinion. But if you want to reference what I'm talking about at this point, we're talking about sheet summary, view or edit your project summary data. The sheet summary is a pretty cool feature, and you can access this pop-out by going to the far right-hand side where there's menu options here, and it's the second from the bottom where it says summary. This is a pre-populated sheet summary. It's a way to organize and report on project information in your sheet. At quick glance, you can see that we have 33 tasks that are not started here. We have 0 that are in progress, 0 complete, 0 canceled, 0 on hold. You can add different fields here if you'd like. And so feel free to explore some of the other things that you'd like to see summarized here. I won't go into very much detail on sheet summary because you can get pretty in-depth with this, but I will call out that you can use formulas when you're creating new fields and whatnot. So if there's something that's not currently on here as far as the default that's showing up, you can go ahead and click New Field. To edit any of the ones that are currently showing up, look for the 3 little dots when you hover over one of the items. And if you click on that, it gives you the menu options: clear field, currency, number formatting, and so forth. So that's how you would edit one of these if you look for those 3 little dots as you hover over a specific field. I'll highlight a few of the ways that you can change the view on here. If you click on the 3 little dots by hovering over each of the columns, you can select filter. And there's something else that you can do, which I love. You can go down to expand all or collapse all. I'm going to click on collapse all. I want to see this project sheet in the most simple form. And it is just Project Amethyst at this point. I told you if there is a parent task that has a plus sign next to it, that means that there are grandchild tasks below it. So I'm going to click on that plus sign. I've now got planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Maybe I only want to look at the planning phase right now. I'm going to click on that. Okay. Got project kickoff, create project management plan, collect deliverables. I want to expand the create project management plan. That really just simplifies the view. So know that you can expand all or collapse all. Also, what if I want to look at tasks that fall on specific dates? I'm going to go back to expand all here. But maybe the project sponsor has asked, okay, so what does February look like for this project? Because something else just came on our plate and it's going to be heavy lifting. So let me go to filter for the start date. Start date is greater than, I want to see all of the tasks that start February 1 or after. And then I'm going to apply. Okay, so this is all of the work that we're going to be doing in February. I can really quickly showcase that, have the discussion with my project sponsor, and determine if we need to make any changes. When you want to clear a filter, you also want to select those 3 little dots, and you can tell if there's a filter based on this little filter that shows up for that particular column. I'm going to click on those 3 dots and go to filter. And if I want to eliminate it, I can just trash it. There is a little trash can here, the bottom left-hand side. I trashed it, and now I see my full project schedule here. This is really helpful to filter if people just want to see the tasks that are assigned to them. So you could filter by who it's assigned to. And I only want to see what's assigned to me. Apply. And it took out all of the parent rows as well. So I can see everything that's assigned to me, which are all of the tasks at this point. I told you I would come back to baselines once we got all of the start dates and end dates in here. A baseline is what you are going to compare your schedule to. When you set a baseline, you want to do it before any of the work is done. So you set a baseline generally when your project is 0% complete all the way down. In order to see baselines, you need to be in Gantt chart view, Gantt view. I have an entirely separate video on baselines, so if you want to dig in deep, please reference that video. For now though, I'm going to highlight Gantt view, select it. You see that there's an option here for baselines. If I click on baselines, I can go ahead and set baseline at the very beginning of the project, set. I want to click the save button. And just to clear the noise out, I'm going to eliminate the Gantt chart view. I'm going to go back to the grid view. Now that I have baseline start and baseline finish and variance, I can start my project and everything is going to be measured against these as far as my start date and my end date. So let's say we have just done the project kickoff. It is now complete. Going to mark it at 100% complete. And I'm going to click save. Nothing changes here because we did it on schedule. However, let's say that we're working on the scope management plan and we realize we are not going to be finished by 12/28. We have to increase the duration. It's now going to be 16 days instead of 14 for us to complete that. And I'm going to click save on that. My baseline start and my baseline finish and my variance is now all automatically filling out. And it shows that I'm 2 days behind schedule. Since those tasks were on my critical path, it means that the rest of the work is going to be 2 days behind schedule as well. The target start date, the target end date, the schedule delta, this is also tracking my actual compared to the target. It was pre-programmed. I like to add in the baseline start, the baseline finish here, because maybe at one point we want to approve a change and set a new baseline versus going from the original. We can do that as well by going back to Gantt view, selecting baselines, and I want to reset. We've approved a change. Now we only want to measure against the new baseline. I'm going to reset it. Baseline dates will change to match the start and end dates in your schedule. Do you want to reset it? I want to reset it. Going to click save. Going to go back to grid view. I now have everything zeroed out here for my baseline start, my baseline finish, and my variance. However, maybe I want to reference my target start date, target end date, my schedule deltas that were pre-programmed in this schedule. So now I can see where we originally started and have my baseline start, baseline finish, and variance for the approved change. So you can use these for different purposes, which may seem like it's duplicated columns if you're only having your baseline start, baseline finish, and variance from the day you started your project schedule. However, oftentimes new baselines are approved throughout the life cycle of a project, and that would give you the ability to still measure your original deltas and your updated baselines. Remember that your schedule health is tied to the schedule delta, not the baseline columns. So that is what your schedule health is linked to, and it is going to be the green, amber, and red status. So at quick glance, you can tell, are you on track or are you behind schedule? We are going to consider this project plan as completed. Make sure you always save. Click that save button. And I'm going to go back to the workspace and look at what else is in my project folder. Let's take a peek at this overdue report. It's a report that was already in our master folder, and we want to build the report. When you click into it, it is going to ask if you want to build your report. Just a heads up, this is already built for you. And a couple of things to call out. A task is automatically flagged as overdue if the status is not complete or canceled and the end date is in the past. Let me say that again. A task is automatically flagged as overdue if the status is not complete or canceled and the end date is in the past. This was already set up and built. So this surfaces all overdue tasks in one view. Nothing is showing up here because all of the tasks that are in my current project sheet are future dates. They are all future dates. Today is December 4th for me. The December 4th task is marked as complete and everything else is in the future. So please note that. I didn't change anything. I am going to go back to the workspace now. And I want to highlight the project milestones. This will pull in all of the project milestones. To remind you, a milestone is something that has 0 duration in your project schedule. So if the start date and the end date are the same, because you have 0 duration in there, it's considered a milestone. This is going to pull in all of those milestones so you can add really specific milestones within your project sheet, and it will pull into this project milestones report. I'm back in the workspace. The third and final report that I'll show you is task roll-up. Please note that reports are what are showing up in orange in here. So our overdue report, our project milestones report, our task roll-up report. This is information that is pulling directly from our project plan. So our project plan is what we just went through. We customized it with all the tasks, added the durations, which drove the start dates and the end dates and so forth. So we've got our project plan, the 3 reports, project milestones, overdue, and task roll-up. Clicking on task roll-up at this point. This is a really quick way here to see how many tasks are not started, how many are in progress, how many are complete, canceled, and on hold. So if you want a really quick view here, you can come to the task roll-up. It's already built out for you. Back in the workspace, the other thing that we will look at is the project tracking and roll-up. This is our dashboard. This dashboard can and should be customized as well. If you recall in video 2, I showed you how to customize at the portfolio level. You click on this little pencil in the upper right-hand corner, and you could customize any of the widgets on here. The reports that I just showed you are pulled into this automatically. So we've got our overdue task. There's none showing up. Our project milestones. We've got our task by status. Only 1 is completed at this point. Shows the percentage of the project that is complete at 6%. Our overall start date and end date of our project. Project contacts. I'm the contact listed for all of them right now. And then we have links to our specific reports and our project plan. To remind you, when we updated the project portfolio dashboard, you can share this with your key stakeholders and give them specific permissions based on what they need to do. Maybe they only need to view. Maybe you want them to be able to comment. editor cannot share, editor can share, or admin. So this is a really handy pre-built tool for project-specific information. We have now covered everything that is in our project level folder. We've talked about the project plan. We've talked about the 3 reports: project milestones, overdue, task roll-up, and then we've talked about the project dashboard. Please note the project metadata. That is what we worked with in video number 1, where we linked everything and got everything to talk to the portfolio level view. So that is what the project metadata is. The final thing that I want to show you before wrapping up our final video, this is again our 3rd video of a 3-part series, we need to go back to our template set folder. So I'm here within the workspace. I want to click on template set. This is where our project intake sheet is. We're now going to click on that and look at this, beautiful. It pulled in all of the current information for our project schedule here in the yellow. It starts on 12/4. It ends on 2/24, and it's got a link to the dashboard that I just showed you how to go in and edit. Our schedule's at risk. That's automatically pulling from our project sheet. Our project status not started. Probably can update that in our project schedule since we did mark the kickoff as completed. So the information is going to be as good as updating your project sheets. So people need to update it so that your portfolio level is pulling in all of the correct information. The last thing we want to do here is delete this Project Apollo. Delete this Project Apollo. It was just mock data. We're going to keep Project Amethyst because we just went through, we updated all of it. It's a real project. And we're going to click Save here. Everything is now linked, which is exciting. Congratulations on setting up your PMO. That's awesome. I know that it's a lot of work doing this. However, as long as you stick with it, you require the project intake sheet. That's going to be the key piece of information. And you can continue to refer back to this 3-part series. I would love to hear any of your questions or comments below. I know that we went a little bit out of order for this final video as far as what we covered. There are 12 steps that are listed for the customized project level. The first one, modify the project plan sheet. We went through that in detail. Step 2, use baselines to track project status. We covered that, the importance of setting that baseline. We talked about adjusting durations and predecessors and why you should have a logic-driven schedule. We assigned tasks to the different team members. We updated the automation by adjusting the alerts and aligning with the project team on when they should receive specific alerts. We took a look at the sheet summary, and I showed you where you can add new fields. I showed you how you can update the status and filters in your project sheet. We took a look at the Overdue Report in addition to the Milestones Report. We also looked at the schedule health column, and I talked about how that is automatically populated. We looked at the project-specific dashboard. We deleted the sample data from the project intake sheet and made sure that it is showing up in alignment and properly linked to our project. And the last step for you to really check all the boxes is to share your new solution. The change management side of setting up a PMO is critical. Your customers, your end users, the people that are going to be filling out the project intake form, you need to take the time to demo it with them. Make sure that they understand how they go about accessing it and what each of the fields mean. And then make sure that whoever is approving the projects after they're submitted knows that that is the expectation. We currently have it set up as the project sponsor. So ensure that they know when they receive a Smartsheet notification that they approve or disapprove the project to move forward. And then, of course, you need to go in and you need to set up all of this information for each of the specific projects. Refer back to video 1 if you need a quick refresher on that. Thank you so much for joining me. I know that this is by far the longest video of the 3 video series. I hope the information was helpful. Have a great rest of your day.